So I rather feel that Fermin and Hidalgo don't really need an introduction. Hidalgo is one of the great names of sherry. They're one of the few family-run independent sherry producers. Fermin is the 8th generation, and they were founded in Sanlúcar de Barrameda in the late 18th century. And of course, that's the home of Manzanilla rather than Fino. So their reputation is, as you sure all know, is based on Manzanilla and in particular on La Gitana. So we're going to have 6 samples today to see how sherry styles sort of develop with age and talk about oxidation and flora and all that sort of thing. So Fermin, over to you. And thank you.
Thank you. First, thank you for inviting me to do this tasting. I really am really glad that you did that. I hope you will enjoy this brief introduction to biological aging. Well, actually, we will have 3 manzanillas that they produce. They are biological wines. And then we will have 2 biological and oxidative wines.
Participants.
First thing, as Rosemary said, I'm Fermin Hidalgo. I'm the 8th generation of the family. We were established in 1792. We are the 3rd oldest sherry house, but the oldest that is still owned by the same family of the founder. Well, the background is not fake. Is one of our wineries. Actually, it's the main winery. Is called St. Louis. Is one of the biggest winery and the tallest winery in the whole region. Is 14.5 meter high. The height is because we want to build as tall as we want. It's a matter of making at the summer the warm air to go up, and where the casks are to have a better, a more mild temperature. Well, I would like to start talking a little bit about vines, about the vineyards. People here in the area don't talk a lot about vineyards because 55% of the vineyards are owned by co-ops members. 15% is owned by independent owner of vineyards that sell grapes to wineries, and just 30% of the vineyard are owned by wineries. Just to let you know, there are about 80 wineries in the whole area. Just 30 own some vineyard, and out of those 30, we are one of the very few that don't buy grapes from other people. We own 120 hectares, and because not many wineries own vineyards, people here in the area don't talk a lot about vineyard, But as you know, you are professionals in the wine industry. The vineyard is probably one of the key things that you have to have in order to produce a good wine. Actually, here in the area, I say that we have a double terroir. We have the classic terroir, the vineyard, the climate, the soil, etc. But also it's really important where the wineries are built and how they are built. For example, our main vineyard, that is about 100 hectares, is in between Jerez and Sanlúcar. Actually, it's in Jerez. If I take the wine, because there we have the vineyard and we do the vinification process at the vineyard. So if I take the still white wine fortified, because we fortified at the vineyard, if I take it to Sanlúcar, I will produce Manzanilla. If I take it to Jerez, I will produce Fino. But moreover, if I take it, the center of Sanlúcar has 2 main neighborhoods. That is the low neighborhood that is by the sea. That's why we call it low neighborhood. and the high neighborhood. So if I take to a winery in the high neighborhood, I take my still white wine fortified, I will produce a manzanilla that is slightly different to the one that we produce in the low neighborhood. That is where we are. Over there, that way is the mouth of the Guadalquivir River, and we are just 500 meters from the river. So this winery was built in 1850. It's not the original one, but it was built in order to try to produce the best manzanilla possible. Why? Because in order to produce manzanilla, you need a lot of humidity and mild temperatures. So basically, the closest to the sea, the better. Talking about the vineyard, something really important is the type of soil that we have. And here you can see, this is a sample of the soil of our main vineyard. You can see that it's really, really white. It's called albariza. Alba in Latin means white. It's really white because it's very rich in carbon calcium, and that carbon comes from sediments from diatomies, algae, and fish, because millions of years ago, all this area of Spain was under the sea. So those sediments is what produce this type of soil. That one of the, I would say the two main characteristics of the soil is that it's really rich in minerals. So our wines are quite high minerality, and also it retains water. Here, unfortunately, it doesn't rain a lot. Actually, we have been suffering a very, very important short drought. It seems actually the last reasonable good harvest was 2018. And since then, we have very low rains. Actually, maybe this summer here in this area, we will have cuts of drinkable water at night. That's so the situation is really, really, really bad. But anyway, so the vineyard is key as in any other region, but also it's really important in order to produce biological wines, how the winery is built, because as I said, the closest to the sea, the taller the building is, the better environment you have in order to make the best environment for this that you are seeing. You see it? This is the yeast. Here you see the cask. It's a cask that we had with glass in order to see the inside. So you can see that the yeast is kind of a film that protects wine from oxidation and also interact with the wine. That film of yeast stay the whole year on top of the wine in Sanlúcar because of the special microclimate that we have here in the area, especially in Sanlúcar. In Jerez and El Puerto de Santa Maria, that are the other two towns that are the sherry cities, let's put it that way, have a slightly different climate. Jerez and El Puerto is just 20 kilometers away. Even though it's a very, very short distance, the climate here in Sanlúcar is slightly different. Basically, it's more humid and is protected from the east wind. The east wind here is really, really, really hot. And when, for example, in Jerez, you have a lot of east wind, here in Sanlúcar, you have very little. So basically, as I said, the climate here is the best climate in order to have the yeast in their best shape. Actually, the biological aging here in Spain start to happen in Sanlúcar, and it was export, put it away, to Jerez later on. I'm going to pass now to talk about the wines, but do you have any questions so far? I don't want to do a speech, so seriously, feel free to ask whatever you think.
Yes, I have a question. So I should introduce myself. My name's Wink, and I know a lot about Jura wines, so I guess I know a lot about the Vale in Jura, which is very different to the floor, and the conditions are very different, I know, to the conditions with you. So you were talking about the layer of floor on top of the barrel. Does the thickness remain the same through the year? And what are you looking for in terms of the quality of that? Well, we call it in Jura a veil of yeast. What are you looking for in it? Can you tell us a bit more about that, please?
Here in Sanlúcar, in the sherry area, we also call it veil of flor, veil of the flor. And flor is flower. And as far as I know, we call it flower because when it starts to appear, you have little pots of yeast happening. And if you take a close look, it looks like flowers happening, you know? So going to your question, the thickness of the yeast is very important. The thicker, the more active the yeast is. And during the year, it changed slightly. The yeast likes mild temperature. So the time of the year that the yeast is thicker is in spring and autumn. It's slightly thinner on summer and winter. On summer is quite warm, and on winter is quite cold for this region. So the thickness, as I said, it's slightly changed along the year. Did I answer to your question?
Yes, it's so the opposite of Jura. It's fascinating. But just a follow-on question, you talk about the year, and just because my knowledge is very out of date on your winemaking, is it just 1 year the wine is under floor?
Regulations say that in order to be a sherry, it has to be aged minimum for 2 years. However, our youngest sherry is La Gitana, that is 5 years age. So this wine has been under the layer of yeast for average 5 years. We will have La Gitana, then we will have La Gitana en Rama. I will explain you what is en Rama. And then we will have Pastrana, that is a 12 years age Manzanilla. It has been average 12 years under the layer of yeast.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Any other question about the introduction? Okay, let's move on and let's start tasting a wine that is not a sherry, okay? But it's the base wine that we use to start producing manzanillas. It's La Stretta del Cuadrado. El cuadrado means square, and it's the name of our main vineyard. This still white wine is a wine that comes from a plot of our main vineyard, El Cuadrado, that is 30 acres. That's why it's called Las 30 de Feriz of El Cuadrado, Las 30 del Cuadrado. It's come from very old vines, which is, they are about 70 years old bush vines that is really, really, really unique and very special, because most of the wine producers here in the area are more in the quantity than in the quality. So as soon as the vines reach about 40 years, the production starts to decrease. And most people, what they do is to take out the vines and plant new ones. We don't like to do that because we are in the quality, not in the quantity. We are happy to have less production because we think, we are pretty sure that the quality of the mast is going to be better. Actually, we are one of the wineries that start harvest the latest. Usually, for example, last harvest, it was a harvest that it was really difficult because we have really, really high temperatures on June. That is really rare. So kind of the vines got crazy. For example, beginning of August, I saw a vine that had grapes, pretty well mature, but also we had flowers on the same vine because the vines, as I said, got crazy. And that year, it was the earliest harvest since we have records. And you know, here we have quite a long history of records. So some of the big guys start the harvest on July. However, we start about the 17th of August. Actually, as I said at the beginning, I am the 8th generation. Since 2014, the 8th generation, start managing the winery. And since then, we have been paying a lot of attention to the vineyard that my ancestor also did, but we are going more into the vineyard. And since then, we try to harvest the latest possible. Actually, we hire many people that has already finished working for the big guys, because sometimes we start when the big guys has already finished. So this is a still white wine that is very peculiar. Is fermented in Manzanilla cask. Actually, in our aged Manzanilla, in Manzanilla Pasada Pastrana. After fermentation, we do fermentation on the cask, but we invent a pipe that through the pipe goes cold water. So we control the temperature inside the cask. After we finish the fermentation, we leave the wine with fine lees. And we do batonnage twice a week at the beginning, and then once a week until May. That is when we usually bottle this wine. This wine, the one that you are tasting, is 21. We in about 2-3 weeks, we will bottle 2022. It's a wine that you see the minerality that I was talking to you before about that characteristic that the soil does to the wine. I think you can feel it. Do you have any question? What do you think about the wine? It's a wine that I say that you may like it or not, but for sure it's a very special wine. very different.
I ask you, how much do you make of this wine?
We produce very, very little because the yields of that plat of the vineyard is very low. Let's say that in a regular year, you have 15,000 kilos per hectare. However, in this area of the vineyard, we just harvest 1,500. So the production is very low. It changes every year slightly, but it's around 10,000 bottles. 10 to 12,000 bottles.
10 to 12,000 bottles. So what proportion is that of your whole production?
Nothing, basically.
No, but
We produce. We produce 1.1 million bottles.
1.1.
That's why I said basically nothing. But I mean, very, very, very little.
What's the alcohol level?
This year it was pretty low, 11.5, but it's because it was a very difficult year. It's usually around 13.5, because this is the last day of the harvest. We do it for this wine because we want to get the best maduration of the grape possible. And as you know, most of the best still white wine in the world are quite high in the percentage of alcohol.
And I missed the age of the vines for this vineyard.
70 years, 70.
70, yes.
The first vintage that we did of this wine was 2015. It was a test, basically, that we start producing the wine because we are very good friend of the old winemaker of Cune. You probably know Cune from La Rioja. He's a good friend of us, and he helped us developing this wine. The name of this winemaker is Basilio Izquierdo. Has been the winemaker of Cune for 30 years.
Sorry, I might have missed it, but where exactly are these vines? Where are these 70-year-old vines?
Is in one of the corners of our main vineyard, El Cuadrado, that is in Jerez. Even though it's in Jerez, that area of the sherry area is called Balbaina. It has been usually owned by people from Sanlúcar. If you don't have any more questions, let's go to the next wine. The next wine should be La Gitana, our flagship Manzanilla, our flagship Manzanilla. Actually, I like to say that this is the wine that pays the bills. This is the wine that allows us to do, for example, this still white wine that we have before, Las 30 del Cuadrado. I don't say what I'm going to say, but people say it. La Gitana is probably the benchmark Manzanilla. It's a very fine, very elegant Manzanilla. Average age 5 years. I would say, if you ask me for the main characteristic of this wine, I would say finesse and saltiness. It's a great wine. It's a gastronomic wine. One of the things that I try to do when I go to UK, that I was last week, by the way, is to try to make people understand that sherry is not just an aperitif, neither a dessert wine, you know? La Gitana is 0.02 grams of sugar per liter, basically nothing. And in the opposite, we have also Pedro Jimenez, that is one of the sweetest wine in the world. And we have everything in between in terms of sugar content. Do I have to go through the Solera system? Or you know, any of you don't know what is the Solera system?
I would think the majority of members know the Solera system, unless anybody wants to put their hand up.
Well, if you want real quick, I explain it. Okay. Okay, you see this cask here, the cask on the floor are the Solera, is where we take out the wine to be bottled. What we took out from these 3 casks, we replace it with these 2. And these 2 are replaced with this one. And here is where we pour the still white wine from the year. Still white wine already fortified. So what is the Solera system? The Solera system is basically a blending system of different vintage. I can guarantee you that on La Gitana, you are drinking particle of wine from 1850. That is when we built this winery, because we don't take out all the wine from the cask. In our case, we take 21% per year of the cask. We will always have particle of wine that is that old. Any question about the Solera system? Any question about the wine?
Does the wine stay underfloor throughout that time?
Yeah.
In Solera.
Yeah. We, in the old days, actually, as I explained you, the Solera system is not really as we do it now. I explained it like we used to do in the old days when we didn't have pumps and we use gravity. Now, because we have pumps, we arrange the winery in a slightly different way, basically because we want to produce the best possible wine. And, you know, technology has helped us. I would say that the best wine in the history are produced now because of technology. Something that I want to make sure you understand. La Gitana is not, Manzanilla is not just an aperitif. It's a great aperitif. It works really well with olive, almonds, jamón ibérico, prosciutto, but also works really well with seafood and fish, especially white fish. What do you think about La Gitana? Thank
Delicious. Delicious.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's lovely. Fresh and salty.
Okay, let's move on to the next wine. That is La Gitana en Rama. You know what La Gitana en Rama means? In Spanish, it means branch. And we use that word in order to make a simile to, it's like if you go to a vine, you go to a branch of a vine and you take a grape and you eat it straight from the branch. So what we try to mean is that it's pure straight from the cask. The difference between La Gitana and La Gitana en Rama is basically that La Gitana, we filter the wine and we stabilize the wine. We guarantee that La Gitana in an open not open bottle can last over a year. We guarantee a year it will be still fresh, very good to drink. In the case of La Gitana en Rama, we guarantee that is great up to 6 months. After that, it's not that it turned bad. It's just basically that it develops and it start to get a little bit of oxidation. What you are drinking, La Gitana and Rama, it comes from a bottle, but because I am at the winery, I'm going to take it from the cask. That is basically as good as the one that you are drinking. I'm going to do the Venecia show, the traditional way of taking out wine in order to taste here in the winery. Cheers.
Cheers.
As you see, it's more complex,
Mm.
had more aromas, because when we filter and we stabilize the wine before battle, in the case of classic La Gitana, when we do the filtration and all that process, unfortunately, the only way to do it is we take out some of the aromas and the complexity of the wine. So here, La Gitana and Rama, you have a manzanilla that is pure, straight from the cask. It just has a gentle paper filtration in order not to get, particle of wood from the cask, or just to clean it a little bit. What do you think?
Can I ask you about if you were a consumer buying a bottle, how would you know? Because you said it's guaranteed up to 6 months. Is there something on the bottle to say what date?
Yes, we bottle the wine twice a year.
Yes.
In spring and autumn, because remember, is when the yeast is in its birth shape. So in the back label, you'd see that is a spring. In this case, it's the spring 2023.
Okay, so and it says somewhere that you can't guarantee. Well, it says drink within 6 months. Does it?
Right now, I don't remember, because I have here. This is the Spanish version. In the Spanish version, it doesn't say. I don't remember right now about the English version.
Okay, it's just that obviously we know because you've told us, but somebody buying a bottle wouldn't necessarily know that.
You know what happened? Most of the people that buy this wine are quite knowledgeable about manzanilla, because people that is not very into manzanillas, they will probably buy classic La Gitana, I would say.
I think just to sort of reinforce what I'm from Metzendorf, to reinforce what Fermin is saying, that so that the La Gitana very much is sold either in the on-trade or in Waitrose, Majestic, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, probably where consumers are not that so aware. Whereas La Gitana and Rama is very much sold by the independent specialists and and tanners, for example. So they're very much aware of their consumer base as well, and then communicate more directly. It's sort of more of a hand sell, definitely, than the La Gitana. So then, it would be communicated.
Thank you, Brian.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
Okay, if there is no further question about this wine, let's move on to the next wine, which is Pastrana. This wine is our aged manzanilla. La Gitana is around 5 years. La Gitana and Rama is slightly more aged because it's a selection of casks that we just use for the Rama, so probably slightly more age, about 6 years. In the case of Pastrana, is 12 years age, and is the first single vineyard manzanilla, and as far as I know, is the only single vineyard manzanilla. This the vineyard that we use for the grapes that we use for this manzanilla come from a vineyard called Pastrana. So it's the vineyard that gives the name to the it gives the name to the wine. This wine we start aging in the 80s. It was a new wine for us that it was developed by one of my ancestors, Javier Hidalgo, and his friend Cristiano Vanceller from the Port region. They select this vineyard because it's one of the most coastal vineyards of the whole area. It's just 3 kilometers away from the sea, so the conditions are very special, a lot of humidity. And well, it's actually when we do the vinification of the grapes, of the mass from both vineyards, just on the still white wine, you feel that is quite different. I'm not saying which one is better, they are just different. This is a manzanilla that is even more complex than La Gitana, both versions of La Gitana. This is more complex. You start feeling some hints of nuts. And I don't, probably you know this chef that made the Spanish cuisine revolution back in the 80s and 90s, Ferran Adrià, El Bulli. He used this manzanilla in order to pair dishes in which the main ingredient is jamón ibérico. So it's a very special manzanilla. We don't produce a lot of bottles. We just produce 20-some thousand bottles. Actually, the distribution is lower than La Gitana, but you can find it in, let's say, Waitrose, Majestics, etc. What do you think about this special manzanilla? No question, no comments?
I think we're enjoying it so much, we're struck dumb by it.
Well done.
Splendid, thank you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Really.
I have another gastronomic tip for you, which I think it was maybe your father or uncle Javier gave at a tasting many years ago I attended with the manzanilla, the La-Gitana, is to put a little drop of it into an oyster, and you schluck the oyster down with the manzanilla instead of using a squeeze of lemon.
Oh.
That's true, and it's an amazing pairing. When I eat oyster that I like a lot, I always drink it with La Gitana. Most people have it with champagne. Please try with manzanilla. It's lovely.
Maggie Rosen says manzanilla is the breakfast of champions.
Yeah, today's day is going to be better after this breakfast that we are having. I have here in the region we have a saying that is that anything that swims goes really well with fino and manzanilla. Anything that flies goes really well with amontillado, that is the next wine that we will taste. And anything that walks goes really well with oloroso, that unfortunately today we are not tasting, but it's another type of sherry. And that's a brief guideline for sherry pairing. I just said fino. Manzanilla can only be produced in Sanlúcar. Fino can be produced in el Puerto de Santa María and Jerez, and as I think I said, that the main difference is that the yeast here live in better shape than in Jerez. In Jerez, in winter and summer, it gets weakened and it's kind of get oxidated. It's not really get oxidated, but it's not as well protected as the Manzanilla does. So what is Manzanilla compared to Fino? I would say that is the finest Fino, the more elegant, the more, you know, Manzanilla is female, Fino is male, so like human beings.
Just ask another question about your company. So how do you compare in size to other producers in Sanlúcar?
In Sanlúcar, we are the second biggest winery. In the whole region, I would say we are probably the 9th, 10th biggest. But I don't like to talk about size because, for example, La Gitana, as my colleague Brian said, has a pretty broad distribution in the UK, also in Spain. So we are, for example, supermarket, we are in Waitrose, Tesco's, Sainsbury's. Even though you see us on those supermarkets, we consider ourselves kind of a boutique winery. And it's 100% owned family winery. And for us, to deliver the best quality possible is our main goal. At the end of the day, all of our wine has our last name on the bottles. So we want to be respectful with our history and with our traditions. I don't need a Ferrari. I'm fine with my Toyota, you know? I don't need luxury. I don't, because for me, the most important thing is to be, as I said, respectful with the work that my ancestors have done during these last 230 years. What I'm trying to say basically is that I'm not going to do a poor quality wine just to make money.
So moving on from that, you're probably not going to go down the road of cheaper wines, but do you think, given the quite importance of UK exports in sherry, the new duty regulations are going to affect the quality of some of the sherries we see in the UK?
Affect the quality or affect the price point?
Will people be aiming, will the big distributor sellers still be aiming for particular price points and therefore demanding lower quality wines to meet those price points?
Well, we are kind of afraid of some customers that may change from sherry to other cheaper wines. Actually, the increase in taxes is quite a lot. It's, I believe, roughly that is 2.5 pounds right now for a bottle of La Gitana, and it's going to move roughly to 3.5 pounds. So it's about 1 more pound. So it's quite a lot. I wouldn't say that it will change the quality, but what I think is going to happen, and I hope that that's going to happen, is that private labels, own labels, especially the very cheap ones, will probably disappear. Because it's not just the duty. Remember that I said that since 2018, we didn't have a good harvest. So the price of the grapes here has boomed. I don't know. I don't buy grapes, but I know the price, and this year has doubled the previous year. So it's not going to be possible, even for the big guys, to sell a Fino, for example, that the recommended retail price is, let's say, 5-6 pounds. It's not going to be possible. So, but that for us, that we are a quality producer, looking to produce the best wine possible, I think that's good, because we will get rid of those not very top quality cherries, and the perception of the whole region will improve.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So let's move on to the next wine. Is Napoleon. The next one is Wellington. Okay, don't get mad with me. We have Napoleon and Wellington. Okay, this is an amontillado. That is another style of sherry. It's a 12 years age amontillado. And how we produce an amontillado? An amontillado comes from a biological wine. Here in Sanlúcar, it comes from Manzanilla, and in Jerez and el Puerto de Santa María comes from Fino. This amontillado was La Gitana during 5 years, and after that we take out the wine and we move it to the solera system of the amontillado, and before putting in the cask we add more spirit to the Manzanilla in order to kill the yeast. We increase the percentage from 15% to 17.5. We deliberately we kill the yeast in order to oxidize the wine. So 5 years as a Manzanilla, 7 years oxidating. The main characteristic of this wine is that it is very complex, but very fine also. I would say that in all of our wines, our main characteristic is the finesse. We are kind of comparing to other regions, we produce Burgundy sherries instead of Bordeaux sherries. We produce Scottish whiskey of American whiskey. I'm not saying which one is better, but I will stay with Burgundy. Remember, amontillado with anything that flies, for example, but also works really well with powerful cheese, aged charcuterie. Basically, pairing is not very difficult. It's common sense. However, common sense is not that common sometimes. It's a matter of looking for a balance between the wine and the food that you are having. Nothing has to be more powerful than the other. I mean, the wine shouldn't be more powerful than the food. For example, I wouldn't have amontillado with, let's say, sea bass, because it's way more powerful, the amontillado than the sea bass, but it's more fine, let's say, no more elegant. Any question?
No.
Okay, next wine. Wellington, Palo Cortado. What is a Palo Cortado? A Palo Cortado is a wine that we don't produce. It's a wine that it happens. It's a wine that in the old days, it was kind of a defective wine because it wasn't neither an amontillado, neither a oloroso. You have here, let's say, amontillado, you have oloroso. Palo Cortado is something in between. Sorry, because it has characteristic of both wines. The smell is more similar to the amontillado, and the body is more similar to the oloroso. But again, it's a wine that it happens, and it's a wine that we produce very little because we cannot produce it. It just happened. And in our case, the palo cortado comes from full body amontillados. You can also have the other palo cortados that come from very fine olorosos. And because this wine has characteristic of amontillado and oloroso, it goes really well with basically any meat, mature meat, beef, for example. It works really, really well. Actually, I usually tell to people that give a try and forget for a day that red wines are the wines that has to be used for sorry, to pair with meat. Real fast, as you have tasted the previous wine, Napoleon and Wellington, these two brands come from the Peninsula War. When the French invaded Spain, there was a battalion of the French army very close to my hometown, to San Lucar, and we start selling wine to them. But they came to the winery and they select the cask that they want. So when they select a cask, we mark that cask and we write Napoleon. Then when the British came to help us get rid of the French, we start selling wine to the British troop. And again, they select the wine and we mark it as Wellington. And we are very proud of having such a historic brands that we have the copyright for wines. Any question? We are about to finish. So please feel free to ask me whatever you want. Can't hear you. Cannot hear you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Palo cortado, we never used to hear 10, 15 years ago in the market, but it seems to me it is has become very popular. I know you say it just happens, but with the popularity, maybe you say you have small productions, but other people seem to be making it because it is providing a need for people who suddenly have caught on to the name of Palo cortado.
It's a pity what's happening in some wineries that I know, some of them. I'm not going to say the name, but some of the big guys, what they are doing is blending oloroso and amontillado. So I think I can say that it's a fake palo cortado.
Right.
When you see a cheap palo cortado, think twice. Even though sherry is really affordable, it's probably the best value wine in the world. Very good for consumer, very bad for producers.
Yeah, thank you.
I think the recommended retail price, correct me if I'm wrong, Bryony, for this palo cortado that average is 20 years, I think it's 35 pounds. So it's not even £2 per year. So very affordable. So if you see a palo cortado for 12, 15 pounds, think twice.
I'm actually rather hazy about what makes a palo cortado. What's gone wrong with the Amontillado or the Oloroso? Something I've never quite got my head around.
We don't really know what's happened. It's just that it changed.
Right.
And palo cortado means cross stick.
Right,
Because
yes.
when we detect that a cask of amontillado is changing, we take a piece of chalk and we draw a vertical line. That means that in that cask, something is happening. The wine is slightly changing. So don't touch it. And then 6 months, a year later, we go back, we taste it again. And if we realize that it's not an amontillado anymore, we cross the vertical line. So basically, palo cortado is cross stick.
So can I ask a question follow up to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, thanks. So just to be clear then, Palo Cortado, sorry if this is a really basic thing, has to start off life destined to be Amontillado, but it doesn't work out. So it's an Amontillado that has a life change.
Yes, it's a Amontillado that suddenly start to change, or
Yeah.
in our case, come from an Amontillado.
Yeah.
But also other wineries produce it from Olorosos. That is the same thing. It start to change. Oloroso is totally full body.
Yeah. But
So sometimes the Olorosos change slightly and start to be more fine. And from that, the other wineries produce Palo Cortado.
And no idea what causes that change.
We are working in order to understand what happened chemically, but so far I wouldn't say an answer to that question because I'm not yet 100% sure. I don't want to say something that we don't know yet for sure.
But yeah, that's important because an Oloroso sherry has obviously always been oxidative. That was the destiny for the Oloroso. But a Palo Cortado has to have character of Amontillado in it. So it's got to have some biological character, hasn't it? A Palo Cortado.
But sometimes the Oloroso get those characteristics of biological aging, even though it hasn't been aged under the floor.
Right, that's the mystery. That is right. I think Palo Cortado is mysterious, and it's getting more mysterious as we discuss it. It's kind of like the less you know about it, the better.
and if you had a tasting with another sherry producer, he will probably explain it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, thank you for the mystery.
Need a bit of mystery.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Fermin today?
Could I just ask a more general question about you're talking about stabilization for the longer term, as it were, a year or so. Is the alcohol enough to preserve it, or do you use sulfites at all?
Well, the alcohol helps to preserve the wine. We also add sulfates. By the way, we have a lab in the winery, and we test our competitors every 6 months, and we are the lowest sulfates content manzanilla. We are not even 40 milligrams of sulfate per liter, while average is 80. So you can drink quite a lot of Manzanilla-La-Gitana and you will not have headache.
That's good to know.
Thank you. May
I thank Fermin for a wonderful overview of Herif. I think I've really enjoyed this tasting. It's been a wonderful progression from the unfortified wine through to the Manthia Pastrana and then on to Napoleon and Wellington. I'd gladly finish with Wellington. Thank you so much. It's been really great, great insight and overview of sherry. And also I must thank Mensendorf, so Bryony and then Emma for facilitating this tasting. So very much appreciated. Thank you. Give you a round of applause.